everyone, my name is Ariana, and this is a channel, Into the Darkness. I'm congested right now because I was sick, and I'm still kind of getting over the sickness, so if I sound weird, that is why. Into the Darkness is all about stepping into the dark places that nobody wants to talk about. Usually people want to avoid the darkness. We're stepping into it, and we're talking about these things. There are a couple disclaimers that I want to put out before I start this video. Number one, I am in no way, shape, or form sending anyone to harass anyone. I am not encouraging it. Anybody that does anything that is out of line is not encouraged by me, and it is on their own doing. Number two, everything I will be sharing is public information. I will leave all the resources in the description below, and I have a document kind of giving a rough outline of everything that will also be linked down below. Anything that isn't public information that is of my own opinion, I will make sure to make that clear. But you can quite literally find everything that I'm describing in this video online, and I will give you those links. Without further ado, let's get into this very serious topic. This is about churches covering up allegations of sexual abuse towards minors. This is a very serious topic. That's why I'm going to make everything very clear in this video. I have my notes here. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading off of this. I don't want to give any false information. It's really difficult to understand what's going on because the church that is involved has not made any public statement. So I'm solely going off of news articles, news reports, and court files that I have found online. Sorry if my makeup looks a little crazy. I was playing basketball. Anyway, I think there's a huge problem in the church with not addressing things, sweeping them under the rug. Something as serious as sexual abuse toward a minor should be spoken about publicly, and we'll talk about that later. But anyways, today I'm talking about a very specific person, a very specific church. The person's name is Jude Ramdial. Jude Ramdial was a former youth minister at Woodforest Worship Center Church of God, which is now Victory Temple in Channelview, Texas. And he was accused of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old girl in 2005. The allegations came up in 2014. So the abuse allegedly happened in 2005, 2006. They didn't come after him until 2014, all right? So the Harris County Sheriff's Office investigators at the time in 2014 said that they believe there may be more victims and were asking people to come forward at the time of his arrest in 2014. So the victim reported the assault nearly a decade later, leading to an investigation and his extradition from New York in 2014. Let's go back a little bit. This man allegedly sexually abused multiple minors 2005, 2006. Then, almost a decade later, the girl came up and officially reported the sexual abuse. At the time of the abuse, in 2005 and 2006, he was in that Texas location. Then in 2008, he started a church in New York called HopeNYC, and he was there up until his arrest in 2014. That's when he was booted out of New York to jail in Texas. He was arrested and his bond was set at $50,000, which he was released on bond. So this guy's got money, because ain't nobody just pull out $50,000 from anywhere. That's some people's freaking yearly wage. So the legal proceedings, the bond was set at $50,000, as I said, and the judge allowed him to return to New York after he was let go on bond, under conditions including supervised contact with children and no international travel. What was the church's response? Victory Temple Church of God stated that they are fully cooperating with authorities and are in prayer for all involved. The New York church, HopeNYC, did not issue a public statement, did not reach back to the news when they reached out multiple times, and they kept him in leadership. Here's the news report on it.
A youth minister in Channelview is accused of sexually assaulting a girl in the youth group. Now there are worries there could be other victims. Eyewitness News reporter Pooja Lodi is live at the Harris County Jail to explain the details of this case. Pooja?
Eric, these allegations go back to 9 years ago. Since then, the suspect has moved to New York and become the pastor of a church there. That is where he was arrested in New York, and he is expected to be extradited to Harris County sometime next week. But investigators want you to take a good look at this suspect's face. Do you recognize him? 33-year-old Jude Ramdial has been arrested, accused of sexually assaulting a then 15-year-old girl member of his church youth group. and investigators believe there could be more victims.
You can't make kids out of your sight, evidently, not even at churches.
Ramdial was a youth pastor at the Wood Forest Worship Center Church of God in Channelview. The allegations are from 9 years ago, and the church has since closed. The church that now occupies the building is not involved in these allegations. According to court documents, a young woman has come forward claiming Ramdial kissed her several times and sexually assaulted her in a vehicle on July 6th of 2005. And in July of 2006, the woman claims Ramdial drove her home several times after she babysat for him. She claims Ramdial often drove her to a dark area in her neighborhood and demanded she undress and perform sexual acts on him. Investigators say 2 other members of the church youth group, both under 17 years old, also reported Ramdial had inappropriately touched them.
And I have left several messages for that New York City church where Ramdial has been serving as pastor. I will let you know as soon as we hear back.
It's also important to note that before he got arrested, Ramdial's ministerial credentials, Ramdial's ministerial credentials were revoked after a Church of God ecclesiastical, is that how you say it? Jeez, it's really hard. Trial board found him guilty of 2 lewd acts and adultery. This was in June before he got arrested, the year before, so in 2013, which is also really shady. So the Victory Temple Church of God released a statement that read, "The pastor and leadership of Victory Temple Church of God in Houston, Texas, have been notified that Jude Ramdial, a former member of the church, has been charged with criminal activity relating to minors arising out of conduct that occurred while he was a member of the church. The pastor and staff of Victory Temple are committed to cooperating fully with the authorities in this matter, and we are in prayer for everyone involved." Let's paint this timeline again, all right? 2005-2006 is when the abuse allegedly occurred. I don't know what happens in between 7 and 8, but in 2008, he goes to New York, starts up a church, HopeNYC. A couple years later, 2014, the woman, who's now an adult, officially reports him. He ends up getting locked up, $50,000 bond. He ends up getting released on bond, back to New York, back to serving the church. And he's now in a court battle fighting these allegations. And here I want to read the exact background of what I found in the court file, and a court file that I found of what allegedly happened. Because again, if something like this is gonna go on, I think it should be very public. This is not something that you take lightly. This isn't something you hide. This is something that's made very public and that people should know about. Okay, so Jude was arrested in 2014 for sexual assault of a child, allegedly causing the penetration of EM's sexual organ on July 1st, 2005. Jude, a music minister and church youth minister, lived in a parsonage on the church's property for 2 years. EM testified that she had been very active in the youth group at Jude's church and had known Jude, since she was 7 or 8 years old. EM, a complainant, testified that Jude made sexual advances towards her, including touching her breasts and making her touch his sexual organ. The assaults began in 2004 and ended in 2006, with EM being between 14 and 16 years old. Another congregant, PB, testified that Jude touched her inappropriately at a church festival in 2006. PB testified she accompanied Jude to the parsonage, and once inside, Jude asked PB if he could kiss her. PB testified she froze, and Jude proceeded to kiss her on the lips. He lifted her shirt, moved her bra over, and kissed her breast. Jude then pushed her back and apologized before they left to Taco Bell together. Those were the exact details. Now, what ended up happening? On November 13th, 2019, so mind you, they're in court for 5 years. The Church of God found him guilty of some lewd acts and adultery, so that says a lot. Then she fights in court for 5 years. And on November 13, 2019, the jury acquitted Jude of the offense of sexual assault of a child between 14 and 17 years of age. Following his acquittal, the trial court admonished Jude of his right to request an expunction for the records and files relating to his arrest. It doesn't end, okay? Bear with me. In the case summarized, the trial court initially granted the petition for expunction after Jude was acquitted of sexual assault of a child. However, on appeal, the state argued that the individual remained subject to prosecution for another related offense, indecency with a child. The appellate court reversed the trial court's order, holding that because the individual remained subject to prosecution for the related offense, the statutory requirements for the expunction were not met. So he tried to get his records expunged. Then the state was like, you can't do that because though you haven't been prosecuted yet, you are still subject to prosecution. You still can be prosecuted for a related offense, which is indecency with a child. So yes, he got acquitted for the first offense. There's still another offense out there that he just hasn't yet, but he can be prosecuted for. The appellate court ruled that Jude cannot expunge his 2014 arrest because there's still a possibility that he could be prosecuted for a related child sex offense. Even though he hasn't been charged yet, there's still allegations out there. There's still other people, and that is very concerning. That is very concerning. Because these offenses are legally considered part of the same criminal episode, expunction is not allowed under Texas law. And this was the conclusion. Any records that were handed over to the trial court or to Jude because of the expunction order now have to be returned to the original agencies because the expunction order is no longer valid. And he is currently employed at HopeNYC and often collaborates with their Florida branch, Claremonians. Listen up. Hope FLA, which his brother Jason pastors. That is the outline of everything. This man is currently serving in a leadership position with ties to the children ministry, a foot into the children ministry, which is very concerning given that there are still other charges that are related to child sex offenses that he can be prosecuted for. It is insane to me that this man, given any other circumstance, would never be in a position of leadership. Any circumstance in the outside world would never be able to be in a position of leadership just because for the fact that he got arrested. But in the church, we can allow somebody like him to continue serving as a leader during the trial when there isn't even a verdict yet, so he could very much be guilty, and continue leading currently while there are still other offenses he hasn't been officially charged with, but he can be prosecuted at any moment. That is very concerning. That is very, very, very concerning. What are the issues with this? The lack of transparency. Hope NYC did not release a public statement or reach back to the news. If someone under your leadership is accused of sexually assaulting a minor, you have a moral responsibility to address the public, regardless of whether the allegation has been proven or not. Transparency is not the same as accusation. All right, you can very much say there have been allegations and we take them seriously, very much like Victory Point Church. Congrats to you guys. You guys did the right thing. You issued a public statement. It is not slander. It is integrity. And it is the least you can do in a case like this. Even if the accusations turn out to be false, the church is still responsible for not hiding what's happening behind closed doors, especially when it pertains to sexual abuse of a minor, to the possible sexual abuse of a minor. Sorry, I have to use very specific terms here. Silence and secrecy do not protect truth. They protect power. And in the process, they silence victims and destroy trust. The church should be the most transparent when it comes to issues of justice. If you are going to choose to create a place, a safe place for vulnerable people, because why do people go to church? They go to church looking for hope. They go to church looking for something higher than themselves to believe in. They go to church looking for all these things, purpose. And if you are going to hold a sanctuary for vulnerable people, you do not get to be secretive about serious criminal issues like this. If you are going to hold a supposed sanctuary for vulnerable people to come together and serve for a purpose higher than themselves, whether the final answer is given or not, you do not put a person who is possibly preys on the most vulnerable of our society, who allegedly has preyed on the most vulnerable of our society, which is children. You do not get to keep them in a leadership role and say that you are a sanctuary for the vulnerable. That is deceptive, that is dishonorable, that is inexcusable. And you, as a leader, when it comes to children, do not have the luxury of dismissing or overlooking serious matters, especially when it pertains to children. You have a responsibility to put the safety of the people in your church over the possible offense of those leading it. We are talking about children. We are talking about bring back the seriousness of sexual abuse. Sexually abusing children is not the same as going to the store and stealing a candy bar. This changes the trajectory of a child's life. This impacts so many areas of a child's brain. This is something you never forget that was put on you. You didn't ask for and you now have to live with for the rest of your life. The least you can do is issue a public statement and address this and be honest with your church. A church that hides this is a church that should shut down. A church lacking integrity breeds injustice and empowers the exploitative. What do I mean by that? If you cannot have integrity as a church, there will be injustices that arise, you will overlook them, and there will be many harmed, and the blood is all on your hands because you chose to sweep things under the rug. You chose not to address things. Oh, we'll handle this privately. When something goes this public, you do not handle it privately, especially when it pertains to the sexual abuse of a minor. Handling it privately is not accountability. It's politics. And I personally reached out to HopeNYC multiple times through emails. This is what I said. And yes, I was under an alias because I wanted to come from the point and perspective of a concerned citizen, because I really am. I'm not just coming on here to attack a church just to attack a church because I want to see it closed down. This is very serious. This is very, very serious, and this needs to be out there. Whatever you get from this, you could do with what you will with this information. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just trying to make you guys aware of this, because people should know about this before they step into the doors and put themselves in a situation where they possibly literally can be harmed by a man. This is what I sent. Still haven't gotten a response, right? I sent this April 27th is when I sent the first email. I sent a follow-up email April 30th. It is May 14th right now. I said, hi, my name is whatever. I learned about Hope through a friend, whatever. Browsing your website to see if it would be a good fit for me. I found some very unsettling information. I discovered that the worship leader and kids leader, Jude Ramdial, has been accused of sexual assault as a minor. As a parent, my top priority is my child's safety and well-being. Learning this information has left me feeling extremely concerned. I would appreciate any clarification you can provide regarding the situation, how the church has addressed it, and the steps you take to ensure safety for all the children and families involved. I truly believe transparency and accountability are important, especially in places where children are involved. Thank you for your time and understanding. I look forward to hearing from you soon. And then I said, hi, there's a follow-up. I hope this message finds you well. I am following up on the email I sent recently regarding the concerns I had after discovering some unsettling information about one of your staff members, Jude Ramdial, who has been accused of sexual assault of a minor. As a parent, my primary concern is ensuring the safety and well-being of my child and the children involved in your church's activities. I would appreciate any clarification or updates you can provide regarding how the church has addressed the situation and the measures in place to protect families, particularly children within your communities. Your congregation deserves to know the steps that you have taken to make sure that your people are protected. Nobody told you to start a church. Nobody told you to be a leader. You took that upon yourself. It is now your responsibility to make sure that you're open and honest about these things so that you can prevent more people from getting hurt. The least you can do is be honest with the congregation. You decided to raise up. You decided to start. Nobody told you to be a pastor, all right? Nobody told you to start a church, but you wanted to take that upon yourself. It is now your responsibility to make sure those people are protected. It is inexcusable. The cowardice is inexcusable. It is inexcusable. I don't care what excuse you have. You have every right to do the least you can do and respond. It is very easy to say, hey, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate this is a very serious matter. Can you call this number? Or, hey, these are the steps we took. This is what happened. No, but the fact that you will not answer me and I had to call you so that I can get a response. And when I called you, you just dismissed me and said, oh yeah, they're all lies. And you wouldn't go further in. I was like, okay, so I heard this. And then you decided to be passive aggressive and come at me and my character. That is inexcusable. And I have everything recorded. I just won't release it because I can't release a recording, but I could tell you what happened. You could take my word for it. You can call me a liar. That is perfectly fine. You don't have to believe me, but I will never come on the internet and bash a church for no reason. There's something very wrong going on here, and the people deserve to know. And you're not going to bring this into my city that I was raised in, Claremont, Florida. You're not going to bring this to Central Florida. You're not going to bring this nonsense to Central Florida. I've seen it before where pastors know of a man who has sexually abused multiple people. What did they do when we made them aware? They put them behind the pulpit anyways. It's disgusting and it's inexcusable, and I will call out names. I will call out church names because this is the most serious abuse. Sexual abuse is the most serious crime. It is disgusting that churches try to cover it up. And I will no longer stand with it. Gen Z will no longer stand with it. The city of Claremont will not stand with it. You're going to have to go right back to New York. We won't stand for it. Still haven't gotten a response. It's disgusting. Hope NYC, you should be ashamed of yourself. Pastor Sharon, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm not going to call you Pastor. Jude, you should be ashamed of yourself. Jude, especially you, I'm speaking to you. I hope you see this video. You owe the public an apology. You owe your church an apology, your congregation, for not being honest, for choosing to stay silent about these things. Hope NYC, you owe the public an apology for not being transparent about this. Jason Ramdial, you owe Claremont an apology for platforming a man who has multiple allegations of sexually abusing minors. But I know nobody, I don't know if I hope they release a public statement after this. It shouldn't take me, some random 21-year-old girl from Florida, to pressure you into making a public statement. And I know you'll probably choose cowardice over telling the truth, but it is what it is. Anyway, my first issue is the fact that there's no transparency surrounding this. Second issue, churches are quick to protect the oppressor without attending to the victim. The rush to restore an offender can bypass the hard but necessary work of addressing the harm done, seeking justice, and prioritizing the wounded. When we fail to center victims first, we risk turning forgiveness into a performance and restoration into a shortcut, leaving deep wounds unhealed. It's like seeing a man stabbing a woman and running to the man to create a plan for restoration while the woman is bleeding out on the floor. Your first response when anybody says, whether you know it to be true or not, if somebody says, hey, this man sexually abused me when I was 15, the first thing you do is rush to them. You get authorities involved, and you try to aid them. It doesn't matter if he's like a son to you, Sharon. It doesn't matter if you saw the man and you grew up with him, you helped raise him. It does not matter. You aid to the victims first and you say, okay, let's get this situated. Let's see what's going on. There's a huge issue in the church with them aiding to the oppressors first and then the victims over here bleeding out. The person who got stabbed, they didn't ask to get stabbed. They didn't ask to get sexually assaulted. That was put upon them by a disgusting, perverted individual. And the first thing, instead of rushing to that person that is bleeding out, that child that is bleeding out, we rush to the oppressor. Even if it's just alleged, we rush to the alleged oppressor. That is sick and twisted. The third thing that concerns me is keeping this person in a leadership role, knowing that he can be prosecuted for another child sex offense charge at any time. That is very concerning. I don't care who you are. Like, as I said in the beginning, if you do this at a school and you get arrested, they will never hire you in a school ever again. That is enough for them to say, nope, we're not risking it, not when it comes to our kids. But in the church, we can do that. I believe reoffenders should be, you don't want to know what I think should happen to them. The least we can do is never put them in any leadership role again where they have the possibility of harming another child. That is the very, very, very least you can do. Sure, maybe restoration does exist for this individual. It will not happen while you are actively in a leadership role where hundreds of people are looking up to you, including children and teens. It will happen on the ground. Here's the thing about people in leadership. They feel like narcissistic people in leadership feel like they are owed a position in leadership. You are not. That is a privilege. And when you burn certain bridges, you should never be given a leadership position again. Not because you aren't quote unquote forgiven, not because there's no possible ability for you to be restored, but because leadership is a privilege. And there are certain things, certain lines you do not cross. Same in the medical industry. There are certain things you cannot do as a doctor. If you do them, you will get your license revoked. It does not matter. It just is gone like that because you are held to a higher standard. You are, oh my goodness, you are leading a congregation of vulnerable people looking up to you, of children, you are held to the higher, you are automatically, it is biblical, you are automatically held to a higher standard than just regular civilians. And if you fail to meet that standard of morality, you do not have the right to call yourself a leader. And to believe that you do is it's another level of predatory. Hope NYC, Pastor Sharon Annie, I'm not going to say your last name because I'm going to butcher it. Curtis, her husband. Jason, all of you owe the public a response at the very, very, very least. Claremont, I am so sorry that this is going on. Anybody that's a part of Hope FLA, Hope NYC, I'm sorry you had to hear this from me and you couldn't hear this from the church themselves. But this needs to be aired. This needs to be highlighted because we cannot have a possible sex offender. Oh my God, not just any sex offender, a child sexual predator in our pulpits. And I, with the person I am, refuse to stand back and not say anything about it because I have seen it too often. I have seen it too often and I am done. I am tired. I'm tired of churches lying. I'm tired of churches protecting abusers over victims. I am tired of churches covering things up. You're supposed to be the safe place for people. And I'm going to take a quote from somebody else that they said on my story in response to one of my questions that I posted. You can see it. It's public. Check out my Instagram. I have zero respect for those turning a safe place into a feast for predators. Can't say it better than that. I have zero respect for any church that chooses to protect predators over those being preyed on. It's inexcusable. And, just to see if I'm not crazy, I have asked and I have seen other responses from leaders in the church, pastors in the church, and they said just with the charge alone, they would never put him in a leadership position. If he wants to get restored, he can do it, not from a leadership position. I fully agree with that. And I think that's how it should be across the board. When you get arrested for something like that, he got arrested, $50,000 bond. He could still be prosecuted for other related charges. A man like that should not be in leadership, point blank, period. Get restored from the ground. And if you believe that you are entitled to a leadership position, that's a huge red flag. That is a huge red flag. By the way, the state came after him and denied the request for the expunction in 2022. So it's pretty recent. That's the most recent information I could find. Again, the church hasn't made a statement. So I had to find everything myself. I had to read all these documents, find out what certain court words meant because the lack of transparency. It's a huge issue. And I have reached out to churches that have been related to them. I have yet to receive an email back, but again, I sent the email today, so I wouldn't expect an email back. If you want to share your story, if you have been freaking harmed by this individual yourself and you want to share your story, if you somehow come across this, I will be glad to have you on here. If you're just from a totally different church, you have your own experiences, you want to share your story, I would be happy to have you on. All these different things that churches don't want to cover, that churches don't take serious, that need to be exposed, I will talk about. Anybody that's a part of Hope FLA or Hope NYC, I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I really am. I encourage you to be very careful. Be very careful. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say leave the church. I'm not going to say stay. I'm going to say be very careful. Be very wise. Because a church like this, I do not trust a church like this. You don't have to trust me. You don't have to take my word for it. I'm a pastor's child. I have seen a lot. There is a lot that goes on behind the scenes when it comes to the church world. There's a lot you will only understand if you're an insider. There's just certain things you will not understand if you're an outsider, because there's just certain things you see from an insider's point of view that you would never understand. And from what I'm saying and what I've seen and the experiences that I have had, I am saying be careful. If a church feels comfortable putting this man up to lead other people, I would be very, very careful. This is a very heavy topic. I'm sorry that listen, I don't find joy in speaking about these things. My heart hurts for anybody who has been sexually abused by a pastor, by a minister, by a youth pastor, by a leader. And this is why I'm doing this. Trust me, it is much easier not to do this, not to speak about this. There's no joy found in this. These are real people's lives. It shakes me to my core in a way that I can't explain when I hear stories like this, because it should not be going on. It should not be going on in the name of Jesus. That's the most insane part, right? All of this is the representation of Christ that we have. Let me see if there's any points that I missed. I think I made very good points on my Instagram. Make sure, check me out on Instagram. I'm not saying this just as a meaningless plug. Trust me, I've had enough internet clout. It means nothing. I am saying this because on there I talk about more specific points and I elaborate on them more. And I'm going to go there real quick and see if there's anything that I'd like to mention. So, when a church leader is exposed as a predator, especially towards minors or accused, here's what you don't do, right? You don't cover it up. You don't lie to the people you're called to serve. You don't move them to a quote-unquote lesser leadership role, like pastor to now worship pastor. You don't keep them in leadership of any kind. You don't minimize, excuse, or downplay the abuse. You don't prioritize the church's reputation over truth. What will kill your reputation is being secretive about this, because it will always come out to light. Some random 21-year-old girl from Florida will find out about it, and they will put you on blast. And now you have to explain to everyone why you've been hiding this. Makes you look real guilty. Anyway, you don't ask for or demand forgiveness or restoration as a quick fix. What you do, you involve law enforcement immediately. If there is anything resurfacing and it is abuse involving a minor, you involve authorities immediately. You don't try to solve it on your own. You don't try to solve it in secret. You involve authorities immediately. You make a public statement. Tell the truth. You remove them from all leadership, I believe permanently. You support and work with the victims and their families, just like the other church did. They said, we are working with the families. That's what they did, is what y'all should have done. You run to the victims and their families first to see how you can help, whether it has been proven or not. That's the first thing you do. You aid to those who are speaking out, because first of all, it doesn't make sense to me. It's pretty suspicious. Listen, there's people in my real life that I know, multiple people. This happens all the time. You go and you try to, they have physical evidence of the abuse that they've endured, and somehow their abuser still gets out scot-free. It happens so much. It's insane. It is insane to me. So the fact that this person 9 years later decided to press charges against, why didn't they do it sooner? It's not that simple. It is not that easy to just speak about it as soon as there are people that don't speak about it until like 40 years later. It's so hard. It affects every single area of your life. Coming from someone who has faced sexual abuse myself, I just saw a therapist for it. Was it this year? Was it this year, in the beginning of this year, or was it the end of last year? I just saw a therapist for it at 21 years old. 20 years old. It's not something that it's something that impacts every area of your life anyway. For somebody to come out 9 years later, report him, fight in court for 5 years, that to me says a lot. All right. So you work with them first initially. You provide professional trauma-informed counseling. You provide them with the necessary tools they need. Matthew 18:6, whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Even Jesus recognized the evil in preying on the vulnerable, but we can't do the minimum and take the predators out of the pulpit. And I'm going to end with this. Avoiding hurt feelings and not having someone serve in a leadership position is not more important than protecting a child from possible abuse. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. If you want to share your experience, the best way would be to DM me on Instagram. I'm just more active on there. You could also, I'll leave an email down there and I will gladly have you on here. You can share your story. It's time to stop this church. It is time to stop covering up for abusers. Anybody who walks into a church, if somebody has allegations of sexual abuse against them, anyone who steps into a church should know. They should know that, so they know what they can possibly experience. So they know the risk involved, the risk factor of just stepping into the church. It is not fair to have people walk in there blindly, not knowing what this man has allegedly done. And again, there's still other accusations that haven't fully turned into charges yet. We'll see what comes out of this. I hope justice. I pray for justice. That is the only thing I care about, justice, in whatever form that may look like. Thank you for watching. Share this video. Spread the word. Check out my Instagram. I'm going to make this a movement. We cannot have predators in the pulpits any longer. Goodbye.